Welcome to Tidbit Talkin. Have some ideas about a fictional thing, each one featuring different levels of seriousness. Spoilers, here we go. Nobly raised Cecil may have only gone through the mission because he thought these Mysidians would quickly surrender, or King Elemental Archfiend propaganda legitimately convinced him everybody there was actually very threatening. Sorta similar, if said fellow knew what the bomb ring is beforehand, he'd have initially thought it was for the Mist villagers to use against things like that supposedly evil valley beast located nearby. That fake highness might have re-promoted Shadow Steel Sir had he come back after slaughtering the aforementioned community, because that'd mean he'd likely also be on board with Demas' global takeover. If only in a clearly mind-control vulnerable kind of sense, anyway. Baron's black mages are likely a bit behind on their studies because Cagnazzo doesn't want them learning strong spells of his elemental weaknesses. Which would be really easy, given that they're 2/3 of basic ability, whatnot. That must be a viewing platform Sid uses to make sure the airships are displaying full flight functionality when leaving and coming back. At least one excuse for this weapon shop being locked must be something along the lines of only the official royal armorer can shop there during wartime. Rydia was able to summon Titan right now, despite not really knowing any advanced beast-calling sorcery at all, because the entire village being threatened activates some sort of magical distress signal which powerful entities feel drawn to. The Kaipo innkeeper doesn't question this collapsed girl's condition so much because people wind up too exhausted to move in deserts all the freaking time. Those soldiers take each other out rather quickly without a commanding presence because they lack strong mental facilities on account of being mind puppeteered. Also, there's no direct second attempt on her life, despite that tribe wiping out mission being an important official decree, because never witnessing any meaningful beast conjuring displays, and an early lack of fiery essentials, made the last seem like an inferior half-breed or whatever. Mist dwellers must have also used their magic to call chocobos for simple riding, which they didn't have time to do during the explosive attack. Either that or would have terrified the bird far too much to make trying worthwhile. Tella is confident in a Dark Knight being able to assist because he knows this place as a training ground for such warriors, like that one who visited Fabul years ago, which is why there's equipment Cecil can currently use lying about. Habitat inspecting Lunarians may have been who set up these magic fields throughout the globe as they studied this planet they just arrived at. More shady sword-resistant undead creatures may have been unleashed upon the world when Cecil was confirmed to be actively fighting against Baron. Anyway, this was probably a much more fearsome attack when tons of people called an entire flock for fighting. The Red Wings, led by the newly emerged Golbez, must have actually stolen the crystal through threatening negotiations right before the bombing raid. The signal to destroy this place would have been given right as he left, so nobody would try taking it back. Edward wasn't just checking out Mr. Harvey's story only to see if he knew the person period, as to make sure he wasn't a spy for Spiky Sinister, sir. Dude was also curious about the way Cecil sounded when saying Rose's name to gauge how important this individual was to him. That counterhorn isn't necessarily directed at whoever last attacked, because this antlion has gone insane through the evil influence instead of a more coherent mind control like those human pawns are experiencing. Its simple bestial maternal instincts must have let it resist somewhat futilely. Captain Heavyguilt must keep the explosive jewelry on hand so he never forgets past brutal failures and how important stopping his apparent former king is. Miss Monster Monarch may have subconsciously pulled that Sahagin towards Prince Fancy Pants' location to help him toughen up. That conveniently cloaked creature was able to disguise itself so well because it copied the technique of that spy monk who poses as a dancer. Bahamut may have realized Clulia's son was ready to go to Mount Ardeals and convince Leviathan to intervene beyond just saving that last summoner. Also, the random sailors must have survived too and washed ashore peacefully back home, hence nobody mentioning mass casualties among the crew later. There aren't any hidden items here because Baron's forces looted the place when they attacked. Said Jerk Army didn't do as well with Domsian because they searched less thoroughly since they thought there wouldn't be anything as impressive as magical relics or whatever they took from the Mage Society in a freaking desert. The Elder realizes Cecil might be worthy of passing those challenges because his face reminds him of imagery associated with Mysidia's Dragon Birth legend thing, which was probably a portrait somebody drew of that guy's recently mentioned father. His true might lies in death because he absorbs extra elemental energy from the earth right as decay starts kicking in. Shiny Sun experiences an increase in HP and some other stats upon becoming a level 1 Holy Knight Fellow because he's both awakening latent Moonman blood and truly starting the path to not hating himself. The myth must have been written on the sword in Lunarian. It's likely the only thing in said language Robed Ruler knows. He likely memorized an old translation made by his predecessor of a "Visit your homeland, sons" message that was left by Clulia years ago. It may actually be that it takes a significant amount of vitality to create a warp point like the Devil's Road, not merely use it. Hence why the party's fine with warping more or less non-stop. Information must have gotten muddled over the years once those who built it passed away. Mind-controlled Kai may have spread the rumor that Cecil perished for a few reasons. 1. His good half actually didn't want him dead, which calling off a squadron of pursuers is quite helpful for. 2. His bad side wanted the deed done by himself, something that previous sentence's second segment also aids in. 3. His ego wanted to make sure he looked tough among Metal Monster Master's troops as the dude who slew public enemy number 1. 4. His selfishness wanted Rosa to start being attracted to him as a result of creepy grief comforting shenanigans. Cagnazzo might have banned dance because he knows his magic can sometimes cause shape-shifting, like with that martial artist from earlier. Any random jig might undo his disguise and all that. Once he began traveling, cosplaying as a mere bard, the fictional musical prince might have previously visited Mist to gather tales of summoners to tell. This concealed passage leading to the ancient sword is so big because that thing was originally hidden there by the kingdom founders while they were digging out this waterway, and its surroundings used to be just a normal path. The aforementioned blade and other chests must have been put there as emergency equipment for when new supplies couldn't reach everybody on time. All that airship construction up above must have collapsed a lot of this place more quickly than nature alone. Hallam and Porm didn't just turn to stone and block the trap, they actually magically merged with the wall, hence them stopping it basically flawlessly. That's one reason why normal curative methods didn't work. These kids weren't just afflicted by an ailment, they kinda weren't human anymore. Another reason fixing them couldn't happen is because doing that of their own volition means they just recast the spell immediately upon being restored. It took someone with immense knowledge in both spells and architecture, like their elder, who of course oversees any repairs Mysidia needs, to sort everything out. King Baron's spirit likely couldn't come back in Odin form until Treacherous Turtle was gone, as the latter's Archfiend power was blocking his way. Also, he tells you to go to the land of summon monsters because that's where Rydia is currently. She didn't start leaving until Friendly Serpent King told her the way underground got opened up long term. You won't show up if you return with her before going yourself because he's kinda embarrassed about being half wrong. Dude also probably wanted the party to read up on the tradition of proving yourself worthy against such beings in combat. This item stash in Troya Castle that someone doesn't need permission to access must be publicly available to anyone wishing to explore the nation's vast forest. It of course will get restocked regularly. Tourism, money, encouragement kinda deal and all that. Black chocobos manage to emerge nearby because lots of trees being around grant them plenty of breeding opportunities and thus greater nifty mutation chances. Yang's claws were affected by the magic magnetism. Dudes are strong enough to still move effectively even with extra gravity-like forces in play. Music is too distracting/painful for the Dark Elf because he has giant ears and thus can't focus enough to cast extra strong magic when hearing it. Oh, and the Earth Crystal was likely originally stored here and the others in similarly natural places. The rooms and societal centers were of course modeled after these areas. Charcoal-colored chicken-likes have the strength to fly above mountains when they're headed home because they have extra stamina available when not devoting thought processes to calculating a destination. Maybe there's also adrenaline from the annoyance of being mounted one too many times. Golbez doesn't let them take the shortcut menacing Metal Mario used because he prefers plucking the mystical artifact from their corpses rather than pretend to uphold that phony deal any further. Meteor must have been unsealed once Kluya ran out of strength. It was locked in the first place to prevent Zemus's pawns from using it while not themselves. Speaking of which, Mr. Real Villain decided to let go of his remote-controlled Dragon Knight for a bit to help speed up Dark Crystal Collection because he saw how effective letting Cecil and co. get the last light one was. The legendary spell broke the mind control stuff was of course just a convenient cover-up deal. A magma rock must be able to work without being thrown down deep wells when someone with great magic power concentrates near the crater, hence Cape Conqueror being able to reseal it after slipping the Red Wings through, while the party's kinda screwed later after tossing it. Mellow Menacing Monk's extra paying attention for spies after being deceived earlier by a monster disguised as one of his own men during Fabulous Siege. Lady Timeskip was no longer able to use white magic because, after staying in the Land of Summons for so long amongst what many consider to be deities, her spirituality shifted in such a way that tapping into just one godly power felt bizarre. Golbez used Warp to get away and summoned a tiny bug into his gauntlet that grabbed the crystal and subsequently left in an identical manner. So many chests in Babel have monsters in them because that's how Luge tests out new creations. The ones that survive of the treasure hunters versus prizes are what get deemed successes. Doc Delirious didn't recognize the self-destruct button on that control panel because debris from Barnabas' head can be destroyed obscured everything. Yang must have been devising battle moves for sabotaging tech weaponry ever since failing to protect his home against a flying vehicle raid. Right after Puppet Dragoon offered the Earth-focused ultimatum, his group must have headed to Mithril to get enough silver for fortifying all those stolen skyboats. Hence them being able to fly over magma just like the Enhanced Enterprise, and him being well decked out in high-quality gear once rejoining everyone. Sid probably formulated plans for that hook attachment while thinking about how to best assist the Dwarven army. Basically, his original intention must have been to take their tanks wherever the Red Wings went. Edge didn't get healed before one-on-oneing with Rubicande because he made it that far without getting harmed. Also, he can't pull this off after joining the group because that would be revealing his super-secret Ninja Prince evasive maneuvers. The sparse control his parents have before the battle begins is what weakens their flame magic to the basic levels instead of their typical ninjutsu one. He knows how to operate an airship because his nation's spies stole the schematics for Baron's fleet at one point. Or they just studied their flight patterns and reverse engineered what was just mentioned. Really named Edward can help with maintenance for practically anything because his hidden clan couldn't risk hiring outside help too often, and thus they all must learn a variety of basic life-enhancing skills. The rite of passage mentioned here must be members of Giat's royal family praying in front of each dark crystal or some such before their coronation can commence. Zemus is preventing the party from using warp or teleport here because it wants them worn out from traveling up the cave again before resuming control. Also, the Demon Wall's trap power may be playing a part at first too. Malevolent Moonman's interference must have enabled a special spell that transported Brainwashed Bird Battler directly back to the tower's crystal chamber. Hence that instantaneous activation action. General Fisticuff's wife's frying pan wakes him up because she's the only one he lets his masterful guard down around. Content Corpse King may have also wanted them to wait so they could learn about Odin's lightning weakness Hoopla. Plus, he might have had to defeat the original one to obtain these abilities and hadn't done so yet when they first saw his phantom visage. The Still Land must refer to the elemental force affecting gems all being gone. Prayers for the whale won't work under other conditions because none of them being on those normal Ulcer deals sends up a magical smoke signal kind of thing that lets said vessel take off. So much terrain on the semi-artificial satellite rock thing is rough and difficult to land on, so the Lunarians won't be so easily invaded during their long slumber. Edge's ninja forces must have spread the word to the non-underworlders that this sadistic skyscraper started glowing, hence them all showing up just in time for awesome backup stuff. Fusoya's stats barely changing upon level up could very well be the result of his body still mostly being in stasis. The giant originally may have been built to protect the blue planet from invaders who might have chased after the highly evolved hibernators up in nearby space. That's why they simply never destroyed it after sealing Zemus away. Cecil acts really stupid here and asks those two to stay behind because learning he has a brother just now made him feel super awkward around that girl he sees as sorta sisterly and the woman he wants children with. In actual reality, it was likely just intended as a fake out by the developers to trick us into thinking the final five would be these guys plus beard face and sharp shoulders, and everything wasn't really thought out too much. Also, they flew to that bizarre clearing that's pretty far from their destination because the aforementioned shocking news made sad second son a crappy pilot. Anyway, this was probably a test landing pad deal for the big boat and other spaceships. The pleasantly sealed Lunarians probably pulled together and used psychic power similar to Zemus and created these chests filled with equipment suited for the party. Bluya specifically may have invented this universe's save points as a means to help those checking on the integrity of Wicked Wizard Seal do their job. He would then spread them across the blue planet as he traveled around it, studying everything. Creatures such as Dark Bahamut may arise whenever fully evil folk such as Commander Floating Mind Manipulation try using summon magic. The purple-orange duo must be astral projections Zemus uses to find folks he can potentially take control of. This spell heals Zeramis in his first form because the attack that killed his previous body fuels second life-enabling hatred the most. The holy power flowing from Cecil's body to said crystal is what gets rid of the aforementioned protection. Oh, and that might actually be all of those ones stolen from the blue planet. He likely literally lives on because there's a fragment of him within everybody who has the tiniest bit of negativity on both the red moon and what it currently orbits. They held off so long before leaving for two simple reasons. 1. To make sure the ultimate evil didn't reemerge right away. 2. So Golbez could become adept enough at telepathy to say farewell from within the core before going. Endings are a pain, but all of you are fantastic. See ya.